We're at chapter 28 and we're talking about irritations today. How fitting. No, I think this was a really interesting chapter because there's excerpts from a number of different thinkers and theologians and writers, starting off with Anthony de Mello. Did I say that correctly?
I think so.
And then Roy Hession and Thomas à Kempis, ending with Eberhard Arnold, which is something that we're going to get into for sure. So what did you think about the first excerpt?
The first piece is by Anthony de Mello, who thinks the solution to irritation, being irritated at someone, is by looking within yourself and seeing that the cause of the irritation is not so much the other person, it's you, which, okay, that's, maybe it's true. I find that a bit squishy. That we're just projecting our own weaknesses on other people, and that's why we get annoyed at them. And we should just actually turn in on ourselves. I just don't know that...
Yeah. I guess I started disagreeing with de Mello right off the bat, where he's talking about, our main goal here is to create a happy and perfect, peaceful world. And I don't think that is why we're called to live out our faith necessarily. I think it's a given that there's going to be conflict and tension, and it's more about how you approach it. So some of his approaches are the things he makes you think about, like don't be irritated at someone just because, their truths or how their parents raised them or what their standards and norms and expectations are going to be different than yours. And I think that was a pretty common sense given. So maybe just to think more about other people's perspectives. But I think his premise about the ultimate goal being to live in a peaceful, happy, beautiful
we never will.
world is just unattainable.
There is always going to be conflict.
Yeah.
That's part of life. Conflict is part of life, and it's actually probably something you should be worried about if you go too long in a communal life without conflict, because it means people aren't being honest. And I think the disagreement I had with him is it just didn't seem very straightforward. And I actually think the more straightforward you are in relationships, and sort of the less psychobabble about, if you look inside, you'll go on this journey of self-discovery and realize everything exists within yourself. I just don't believe it. Mm-hmm. I think, where he does, where
trippy.
Yeah, where things do maybe ring true in this section for me is that we shouldn't allow ourselves to become irritated when people don't live up to our expectations. So, for example, if I was raised to get up at 5:30 in the morning and make my bed and put breakfast on the table, and then a fellow community member can't drag themselves out of bed before 7:30, and that could be an irritation. There may be times where you could say, pull your socks up, you can do better than this. Or, there's also other circumstances where you just accept, okay, that's that person and they're not really hurting anyone. That's Anthony de Mello. Roy Hession talks about the well-known passage from Matthew about the beam and the mote. And for anyone who is not familiar with that passage, Jesus cautions us to... he uses the symbolism of a speck or a splinter in someone's eye, and he says, don't try to remove the splinter before you've removed the beam from your own eye. And obviously, a beam is much larger than a splinter. And Hession is suggesting that the beam in our eye is the unloving reaction we have to whatever the person is doing. I think there's a lot of merit in that, and if you just think about it, when someone comes to you with a problem, with something you're doing, and they come in anger or they come in obvious irritation, how do you react? How do you tend to react?
Defensively, for sure.
Yeah.
It's like pushing them away. But I think what I appreciated about reading through these thoughts is that it's not to negate that there's something there that caused your irritation, but to take a moment and see how you can relate to that, and then help the other person as best you can in a way that is loving and not condescending and open to conversation.
Mm-hmm. And open to maybe see that, see it from their perspective.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I don't know where this adage comes from, but I've heard this so many times in my life. My mom likes to remind me of this. It says every time we point one of our fingers at another and say it's your fault, 3 of our fingers are pointing back at us.
Yeah.
So I don't know who said that first, but it's a good thought to remember.
That's very often the case, and again, argues for when you something does irritate you about someone else, like take a moment to think about where you are in life, and maybe that causes the concern to go away, or maybe you do need to change some things about yourself, and then also go help someone else to change, but then talk to them because you care.
I guess this also brought up another question for me, Rich, and that's, if you are the subject of constructive criticism or someone coming to you with a concern, what's the best way to discern what you can apply and then kind of just leave what doesn't apply? Or what's your experience been with that? Because I think that's sometimes a challenge, for me at least.
Yeah, I think, honestly, finding time to just be quiet with it, and not just take the criticism, then take a walk in the woods and, try to find inner stillness, I think. And, in the end, and I think is it Hessian or is it Akempis who says, in the end, God is the one who makes the changes in our hearts, right? There's much probably, at least I know for myself, there's much in myself that I would like to change, the way I react or interact with people. There's things I would love to change that I keep finding that I haven't managed to change. So, that's where I think, finding stillness and also, allowing God to make those changes.
Yeah. And I guess for me, it's also just remembering constantly that, it's not a weakness to accept that and embrace that and see where I need to change, but also how much we actually do need each other in a way, and that's sometimes a good reminder.
Yeah. Thomas A. Kempis, I think, puts a good spin on this. He's basically saying we should see other people's irritations, or other irritating people, as a chance to bear the burdens of others. So we're instructed by Jesus to bear one another's burdens. Often we might think of that as, if someone has a sickness, or if someone has some hardship in their life, that we support them and bring them a casserole. But bearing one another's burdens might also mean seeing an irritating personality or behavior, as long as it's not actively harmful to other people, seeing that as a cross that a person has to carry. Because I do believe, like, some of these things that we find irritating, as I mentioned before, are things probably the person doesn't even want, or doesn't see about themselves. And so it's, in a way, unfair to sort of to pile on when either they can't see it or they probably don't like it themselves, that they are the way they are.
Right, and there's always extenuating factors or situations that are outside of the individual's control that can contribute. And what I really liked from this passage, exactly what you said about bearing with each other's faults and burdens, but also I found this encouraging, that you kind of see the strength that each person has in times of trouble and difficulty, and like we were talking about earlier, how such times do not make us weak. They show us what we are and who we are together. So
Yeah.
that's a great word from Thomas à Kempis.
Yeah, you're never going to achieve utopia. So it's not even worth imagining that you're going to have a communal life free of strife. It's just a given, and the sooner you accept it and learn to live with it, the happier you will be. But irritations do sometimes need to be dealt with, so we can't always just, accept and bear the burden. Sometimes people are doing things that are, actively causing harm to the common life or to other people. They're being unjust or cruel or whatever it is. And that's where this last section comes in. It's by Bruderhof founder Eberhard Arnold, and it's actually a house rule that he wrote right at the beginning of the community, and it's about not gossiping, because gossip really it undermines the loyalty in a friendship, right? So any friendship is undermined by gossip when we're not straightforward with each other. So, he first of all talks about love, how love is joy in other people, right? And obviously love is the greatest commandment of God, and so we should have joy. But when someone irritates us, when someone, he says, whose weakness causes a negative reaction in us, we owe it to them to just give an open and friendly, an open word, a direct word, but done in such a way that it's not out of anger, but it's done out of concern and love. And sometimes that takes a bit of time to get to be able to just go to someone and say, hey, because I care about you, here's something that you should think about changing.
And I think this house rule that's directly based on Matthew 18, for me, it's definitely guided and shaped my relationships and interactions with people, and it's a very powerful reminder of, the gospel directive and dealing with situations that are uncomfortable or awkward. And it also talks about how, starting with direct address, because then you're just putting out these little seeds of doubt, and that doubt can lead to envy or jealousy, which ultimately leads to hatred, and that destroys. Hatred destroys. So I think this direction or house rule has been just a godsend for living in community. And
it has, and it's
also,
not.
Yeah.
It's sometimes probably not observed as much as it should, and because I think, like anywhere, people find a little gossip to be quite a lot of fun. And but to have the rule and to be able to go back to it and say, oh, actually, this is wrong. It's not cool. It's not fun. It's not harmless fun to gossip, and to have discipline over what comes out of your mouth. To have that as a basis is I think one of the keys to the fact that we've been able to keep going here as long as we have. So.
I think it's pretty safe to say that every day brings its new irritations potentially, and so I hope that you all have enjoyed discussing this chapter and are discussing it amongst yourselves, and be interesting to hear your thoughts as well.
Absolutely.